My client, Dawn Richard, she's terrified. She is afraid for her physical safety. There have been so many rumors and allegations swirling around Diddy for many years, including physical violence against people. And in our case, that's some of what she alleges against him. So she is definitely concerned.
Hey guys, how's it going? It's Jackson Buhai here with TMZ. Thank you so much for all your support on recent videos. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe as always, especially comment because we read every single one. Now guys, I cannot believe this is coming out of my mouth, but we may see Diddy free from prison in the coming weeks or even days. And that's because an appeals court met on April 9th to review the trial in which Diddy was ultimately convicted. Now, if you remember in the summer of 2025, Diddy was standing trial and he was facing 5 separate charges. The first one was for racketeering, 2 of them were for sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, and the final 2 were the ones that he was ultimately convicted of, which were 2 counts of the Mann Act, which is transporting a prostitute across state lines for commercial purposes. Now, Diddy's defense lawyers are standing before this judge, and they made some really interesting arguments in the hopes of getting Diddy freed sooner rather than later. They are saying that Diddy shouldn't have been convicted of 2 counts of the Mann Act because Diddy wasn't transporting people across state lines for the purpose of prostitution. He was transporting people across state lines for the purpose of producing his own kinky porn. Yeah, that's their actual argument. They're saying that because the people that Diddy was bringing with him across state lines ultimately appeared in these porn videos where they wore a variety of costumes and engaged in sexual activity with each other on camera in order for Diddy and his at-the-time girlfriend to watch back after the fact. Diddy is therefore not guilty. And they're also saying that because he filmed these porn videos, this is completely constitutionally protected. Now, look, I myself am not a lawyer, and there's a lot more going on in this case that meets the eye. So I'm going to pass it along to Harvey. Take a look at this clip of Harvey breaking down the case and why we actually may see Diddy free much sooner than we expected.
So, hey, just, this Mann Act doesn't apply.
That's what undermines this argument, that it wasn't for distribution.
Did the male prostitutes that were hired and flown to wherever to have the freak-offs, did they know that they were going for this to be filmed? Was that an arrangement that was made, or did they show up knowing they're going to have sex and Diddy decided he was going to record it?
Let's say they, 2 things.
Distribution and consumption.
And not for distribution.
So that's not artistic work.
No, it is, because you can do something artistic for yourself and for your loved one.
You can't
So
theoretically.
that's one of the arguments that was made. We'll see how that goes.
By the way, I just want to touch on one thing. The OnlyFans thing, if you brought somebody across state lines and you did not get their identification to make sure they're not over 18.
Yeah, that's another thing.
That would be a crime.
Right, but it's highly unregulated.
But it's still a crime. You could theoretically be prosecuted under the Mann Act for doing that unless you're part of a regulated...
If they're under 18. If they're not...
You still have to go through the process, the regulated process of checking.
They do not. I'm sure they do not check IDs.
I don't know how many people are bringing people across state lines in order to OnlyFans.
Because
that's husbands and wives, boyfriends and girlfriends groups.
Let's leave the boyfriends.
Well, hold on,
but it just
2 people who are both on OnlyFans who see each other's work say, "Hey, come over and we'll collab. So come to Florida."
Right.
And so some guy from New York comes to Florida. They're not going to say, "Let me see your ID."
I wonder how often that happens.
Now, the prospect of Diddy getting released raises a lot of questions for a lot of people. A lot of people are wondering what his first move is when he gets out of prison, and also what's going to happen to the victims. So I was hoping to get this answer out of Lisa Bloom, who was a representative in this trial for Dawn Richard, who was a victim of Diddy's. I'm going to go and talk to her now. Let me know what you guys think in the comments of this interview. Hey everybody, it's Jackson Buhai here with TMZ. Today I'm joined by civil rights attorney Lisa Bloom to talk about Diddy. Lisa, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. I'm thrilled you're here. This situation with Diddy is quite interesting because when he initially got sentenced last year, we were under the assumption that he would be behind bars for 2 years with time served. But now it seems like his release may be getting moved up. How does something like that even happen?
Well, that would be very disappointing, I think, to the accusers who I represent, to the accusers who were involved in the criminal case. And I think it would end up being a very light sentence.
And so, considering trying to be delicate with my words here, but considering what he's being accused of, is it possible for someone to get their sentence reduced with good behavior? And if so, what kind of good behavior must they demonstrate for that to happen?
So I would expect his attorneys to continue to press for less time. I mean, that's their job. That's what they're there for. Their criminal defense attorneys have an important role in our system, so I don't begrudge them for doing that. But it would be incumbent upon the judge to say no. I mean, when the judge sentenced Diddy, he really very thoughtfully and thoroughly went through all of the factors and the reasons why he imposed the sentence that he did. And I would hope that the judge would stick to it because all of those reasons are still valid. The violence against women that came into evidence in the case, I mean, that was an aggravating factor, meaning a factor that would lead to a more enhanced sentence. That was the most important one for me. The judge could have imposed a much longer sentence, but he imposed the sentence that he did. And I certainly, on behalf of the accusers, I hope he sticks to it.
Speaking on the accuser's behalf, do you fear for them at all upon his release?
Absolutely. So my client, Dawn Richard, who we've been representing her in a civil case for over a year and a half now against Diddy, she's terrified. She very bravely went and testified in his criminal trial. There was nothing in it for her to do that. It was absolutely stressful and very difficult for her, but she did it because she's brave, like women are. And she is concerned that when he gets out, what may happen. The judge had said early on in this case, one of the reasons why Diddy was denied bail, because the judge said that Diddy may have been tampering with witnesses in our case against Don Richard. So if he is capable of that, what else is he capable of? It is really frightening to the accusers.
And if you could go into, and you don't have to, but specifically what Ms. Richard may be afraid of. Is it her physical safety? Could it be something relating to her reputation?
She's not afraid for her reputation. She has a wonderful reputation. She had a tour a few months ago. She's a very well-respected, beloved musician in her own right. She is afraid for her physical safety. There have been so many rumors and allegations swirling around Diddy for many years, including physical violence against people. And in our case, that's some of what she alleges against him. So she is definitely concerned.
Do you think that upon Diddy's release, and considering the time he has spent behind bars, he will change?
I have zero hope that Diddy will change. Why would he change? I think he feels that for the most part, he won his case. I don't know how anyone who spends 3 or 4 years in prison can think that they won, but I think that is his attitude because he did beat the more serious charges. And I don't see any reform in him. I don't see any accountability. I think he only sort of belatedly halfway apologized for his violence against Cassie because that video was released. No, I don't spend my life expecting people to change.
Interesting. Do you not think that what our justice system aims to do in cases like this is reform people? I mean, he has been spending time kind of fostering a sense of community in his low security prison. He's been teaching other prisoners about entrepreneurship. Does that not speak to a growth in character, or do you think that Diddy is someone that's just too far gone?
He could have spent his life before prison helping people, teaching underprivileged people about entrepreneurship when there was nothing in it for him. But he didn't do that. He's doing it in prison so that he can score points and try to get a lighter sentence. Listen, I think it's great that he's doing that. I think it's great that our system encourages people to do that. But the test of character is when you're doing good things in the world for other people when there's nothing in it for you. And I have not seen that.
And so when he does get released, what do you expect him to do exactly? Do you think he'll go straight back to performing? Do you think he'll become somewhat of a social media influencer? Or do you think he will kind of just stick his head in the sand?
Well, I would assume that when he's released, he's going to go back to what he did before, being a music producer, primarily working in the fashion industry, being an entrepreneur. That's what he's done with his life. That's what I would expect him to continue to do. I hope that he does not abuse or exploit anyone. I hope he has learned a lesson from these legal proceedings, but that remains to be seen. Again, I don't expect people to change unless they really take accountability all on their own. And that is a huge process for somebody to undergo, and I have not seen him doing that.
Do you think he'll reoffend if he gets out?
Well, I don't want to make any predictions, and I certainly hope not. I think that he knows that people have their eye on him, but we all saw that video in the hotel room where he is assaulting Cassie, kicking her when she's down, dragging her back into a hotel room that she did not want to be in when she was trying to leave. That's who he is. That is a really terrifying individual. So, if I had anybody, friends in the music industry or the fashion industry, I would encourage them to stay away from him.
And so, moving forward, when Diddy does get out, will you take any steps? You mentioned that Miss Richard, she has some concern to an extent for her safety. Will you take any steps for your client to ensure that once he gets out, she is protected in that regard?
Well, I always encourage my clients, and especially in cases against individuals who are accused of violence, who are wealthy and powerful and have been accused of violence by others as well, to take reasonable safety measures. I personally also take reasonable safety measures. I have my entire professional life because people have threatened me. So I'm not going to detail what they are, but I am very careful. For example, I'll tell you, I very rarely say in advance when I'm going to be at some event. I say afterwards that I was there, but I don't like to announce where I'm going. And there are a lot of safety measures that I think it would be prudent for Dawn to take. I've already talked to her about some of them. I think she's talked to other people about it, and I think it's important for her to be careful. I also, by the way, encourage all women to learn self-defense, which I have learned, and those are good skills for any woman to learn.
Ms. Bloom, thank you so much for joining me today. You've been amazing.
Thank you.